All right, everyone. How are you all doing today? It's good to see folks. I hope everyone enjoyed the talk we had, the talk I did on Spinoza this week. Spinoza is one of these characters that I have to say is just has had a huge impact on me personally, and it's someone that I've gone back to over and over again in my life, and I think I've read and reread Spinoza's Ethics probably, I don't know, probably 10, 20 times, maybe more than that. I've had seminars in graduate school about the ethics. I've taught the ethics. Um, and so Spinoza is one of these characters that has really dramatically affected dramatically affected the overall trajectory of my intellectual career. And so to come back and revisit some Spinoza stuff for the channel was was great. Yeah, also with Deleuze. Deleuze is one of these characters also that I really had a lot of interactions with, especially in graduate school, which is a pity now because I haven't really thought about Deleuze in a lot of years. But I actually almost wrote my dissertation on Guattari, not Deleuze and Guattari, actually just Guattari, who's a fantastic thinker on his own. In fact, Deleuze famously said that basically all Deleuze did was polish the gems that Guattari mined. So working directly with Guattari's work, I really found to be rewarding, and yeah, I really enjoyed working on his stuff. So yeah, Strauss's reading of Spinoza, I think he's right. I think that at some level that he's right. That is to say that I think that, and this is part of the reason why I think that Spinoza links up with the content we do here at Esoterica. And I think that it links up because the theological political tract is, in fact, a kind of esoteric text that Spinoza is having to do this really difficult thing of trying to say one thing, right? Basically, the criticism he has, the political and theological criticism he has, but he has to do it in a way that cannot come straight out as a look. The religion is basically functioning as a social control mechanism, and a dangerous one at that. And so he has to engage in a great deal of subterfuge when he's writing, and we can see this in his letters, right? When Spinoza's asked what he thinks about the divinity of Christ, he says, "Look, I believe that Jesus was real. I believe that he taught things, and I believe that he had a direct kind of apperception of the divine, but the resurrection was an analogy, was an allegory. It didn't physically happen." And so so I think that part of what's interesting about that is that Spinoza is having to dissimulate in the theological political tract, and dissimulate he does. I really do think that document is a esoteric work, and that the big thing that one has to do in order to understand it correctly is you have to read between the lines the entire time. So it is it's a difficult work to tease out what's going on there, but I do think it is a work of profound esoteric writing. And yeah, I wonder now to what degree people are still doing esoteric writing in philosophy. How many people are having to not quite tell the truth because they want to fit into mainstream philosophical work, and they're not really telling the truth in their writing. So yeah, I buy the esoteric reading of that, and of Maimonides as well. We know that Maimonides also was not quite telling the truth all the time in his books. Um, um, hey, from Michigan. Where are you at in Michigan there, Magic Cat? I'm really having some nice weather today. I'm looking forward to getting outside and getting some walking in and and doing this. Um, let's see. The Urantia Book. Yeah, the Urantia Book is really one of these fascinating stream of consciousness, revealed kinds of texts, like the Wahaspe and several of the other like channeled books. Um, um, I'm thinking of some of the books like of even the Book of Mormon at some level. So I find all these books terribly interesting. I just wish they weren't so long. Um, so the Urantia Book and other kinds of these books that were channeled, sometimes they go into hundreds and hundreds of pages, and they're very difficult to follow. So I wish they were a bit more easy to follow, but they are super fascinating. At some point in the future, I'm going to do an Esoterica episode on the Martian language, which was a language that was allegedly uh, channeled by a medium, French medium in the 19th century, and she revealed this entire Martian language. And so the Martian language, the angelic language of Dee and Kelly, I'll get to eventually. And of course, I've covered the lingua ignota of Hildegard of Bingen. And so this really interesting combination of language and occultism and things like that is absolutely interesting, super fascinating. Yeah, the precedence of the geometric method. Yeah, you're right to mention Proclus. Yeah, Proclus's Elements of Theology reads a lot like the Ethics, at least methodologically. And so yeah, the Proclus is certainly going to be one of his predecessors. Although I don't know that Spinoza ever read Proclus. So I really don't know if he ever read Proclus. I think another place is actually Descartes. This is another thing that I think that a lot of people who want to read a really hardcore mysticism into Spinoza, they don't take seriously the real relationship that he has with Descartes. And one of the things that happens toward the end of Descartes' career is that Descartes actually says, look, I can translate my entire system into a geometric method, and he starts doing it. So in some of his late letters, Descartes starts translating basically the principles into the geometric method, and then he says, I could do the whole thing like this, but I'm not going to do it because blah 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 blah, and he dies. And then early on in Spinoza's career, Spinoza also tries to translate Cartesian philosophy into the geometric method, and then eventually shows that, like, yeah, I don't agree with the Cartesianism anymore, and I'm going to develop my own system. So yeah, there are lots of precedents for the use of the geometric method in philosophy prior to Spinoza. Unbroken Tintin, I think the difference between channeled and stream of consciousness is that channeled would typically involve that you're connecting to another entity out there. Whether it's a Martian intelligence or a divine being or something like that. I think that stream of consciousness basically would just say that it's coming from just the unbroken chain of how you're thinking. So now, can stream of consciousness tap into some kind of other kind of intelligence? Maybe, I don't know, but I think that's typically the difference. Yeah, Constantine. Yeah, I was mentioning that the geometric method. Yeah, that Descartes already experimenting with it, but he never really goes full out in the same way that Spinoza does. And of course, also, right, we have the Tractatus by Wittgenstein later, which is also, I think, a mystical text, honestly. And I think the Tractatus, which again I really would argue is a mystical text by Wittgenstein, that's also in something like a geometric method as well. Do any of the lenses of Spinoza still exist? Yeah, some of the lenses I've seen. Well, there's questions about whether they're really made by Spinoza. It's not like he could mark them with his name or anything. But yeah, the museum in Rheinsberg has some Spinoza stuff as well. I've actually been there a couple times. It's a really great little museum. Why did Spinoza use a geometric method? I think he was trying to be as clear as possible. I mean, the benchmark in the 17th century was clarity and distinctness, right? This is all about clarity and distinctness coming from Descartes. And the idea, I think, right, and this goes to Spinoza's third kind of knowledge, this kind of intuitive form of knowledge that one can get, which I do think is kind of mystical, actually. I do think that third form of knowledge would qualify as a kind of mysticism. I think that the idea, right, is that if you could print out the entire ethics, right, and then see it all at once, right, as if some vast logical deduction, if you could see the whole thing at once, then from a calculating point of view, it would be immediately obvious to you the nature of reality, and you would sort of bliss out, literally, right? You would become the blessed person, and you would understand it all at once. So the whole point of it, I think, is such that it is meant to allow one to perceive the whole thing clearly and distinctly. And I think that's the point of the ethics. Yes, Tomas, there will be a replay of this. Yep, it'll be on the channel once this gets uploaded and all that kind of stuff. So Unbroken Tintin, the 1929 copy of the Freemason Service for the Dead. I don't know. I really would be reticent about having it shipped, and also I think that a lot of the stuff that the Freemasons have, I am if there's an initiatory society, my general attitude about initiatory societies is that unless I'm being initiated into their rituals and things, I don't like reading the content outside of those contexts. I don't know. This is I guess it's an ethical thing for me, where they published all the stuff from the I don't know the various kinds of various kinds of initiatory societies, I'm trying to think, the Golden Dawn stuff. But I don't know. I try not to read that stuff unless I'm basically asked to by a member of one of those societies. So I don't know. I had to think about it more. You see this question about Hegel and Spinoza. Oh God, we get into Hegel territory. I'll be here all day. True thought. Sure. I think yes and no, right? Because Geist is the absolute in Hegel's thinking, right? So, and that's the problem. That's the problem of Spinoza for Hegel, right? Is that Spinoza doesn't introduce the absolute, that the absolute is still understood basically as non-spiritual. And so what Hegel does, right? Hegel says, look, Spinoza, you got substance right, but we have to move beyond substance to the objective, to the subjective, and then on to the absolute. And the absolute, of course, is Geist. And I think that the Hegelian read of Spinoza is that Spinoza is where you begin, but not where you can end. And obviously, you end with Hegel because, of course, you end with Hegel. That's Hegel's whole bit. Yeah, I think that if Spinoza and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race, I think that that's assuming we even know what Spinoza was talking about. I think that Spinoza still remains a bit of exactly what he was getting on about remains. I mean, that's the whole point of the episode, right? Is that he has completely polarizing interpretations, and so the idea that there's one interpretation to rule them all, I think, is not really a thing. Yeah, Sean, but Spinoza and Reconstructionism, yeah, I think he had a huge impact, especially Spinoza's reading of scripture had a decisive impact, I think, on Mordecai Kaplan. In fact, if you ever come to Detroit, which there's lots of cool reasons to come here, the old Bethel Synagogue, which is the really old Albert Kahn Reform Synagogue in not far from my house, actually. We've had high holidays there. Along the top of the top of the building inside the main sanctuary, they list all the famous prophets of Judaism. So you get, of course, Moses and Jeremiah, and then eventually you get people like Maimonides, but they also mentioned Spinoza. Spinoza's name is up there. And so literally Spinoza's name is up there on the parapet or whatever of the synagogue. And of course, that's the Reform synagogue from the early 20th century. But this is the old Bethel Synagogue, the one still in Detroit. But yeah, if you ever get the chance to see it, one, it's a beautiful building, and two, it has Spinoza's name up there, which I thought was really, really great. So yeah, I think that Spinoza absolutely had an impact on it. Definitely going to do a video on William Blake. I love William Blake. William Blake's a fantastic poet. He kind of invents this huge Gnostic mythology that is super fascinating. And also his politics were super interesting as well. Blake was a really interesting guy plugged into the goings on in the American Revolution and stuff like that. But yeah, the mythology developed by Blake has this kind of Gnostic feel to it. And yeah, definitely exploring Blake as a kind of esoteric prophet of a certain kind will definitely be something I'll do in the future. I just need to get around to rereading all that the prophetic literature is so hard to get through with all the Zoas and the various kinds of entities that he imagines. But yeah, you get this really cool kind of Gnostic mythology in Blake that's really, really beautiful. Did Uriel da Costa influence Spinoza? Um, I mean, he had to have known about him. Spinoza had to. I mean, he was famous, right? He was excommunicated several times, and I think ultimately killed himself. Sadly, I'm sure he knew. I'm sure he knew him as a cautionary tale. But Uriel da Costa was also. It seems like he suffered from some kind of mental illness that caused him all kinds of trouble. But he certainly knew about him at least as a cautionary tale, and he knew that if you were to get excommunicated, that the Mamad, the board of directors of the synagogue, the Portuguese synagogue, weren't playing around. That they really would throw you out, and it really would have disastrous consequences for your life. And um, and what also people have to remember about the Amsterdam Jewish community at this time was a lot of the folks who came into the Amsterdam Jewish community in the 17th century. Many of those folks had been living as Christians for a long time, And so part of what had to happen in that community with Manasseh ben Israel was they had to basically be kind of reconverted into Judaism. They had to be retaught Judaism from the ground up. And what you end up getting is a lot of people who are kind of living in several different worlds at once. And Uriel da Costa is one of these people who kind of is Jewish and wants to be Christian and kind of is somewhere in between and keeps going back and forth. And it put an enormous mental strain on da Costa, and this ultimately, I think, cost him his life. And so a lot of what's going on in the Amsterdam Jewish community is basically people like Manasseh ben Israel having to kind of reconvert them. And then there's this Shabbatai Tzvi business, right? The entire mess of Shabbatai Tzvi. And many people in Amsterdam were very convinced of that Shabbatai Tzvi was in fact the Messiah. So much so that not Uriel da Costa, Manasseh ben Israel really had to work hard about preventing this from really taking over the community. And I think in Amsterdam, they even printed Shabbatian prayer books. I think that Shabbatian prayer books were being printed with Shabbatai Tzvi enthroned in Amsterdam. So this is the Amsterdam Jewish community is a really, really complicated place in the 17th century. And Spinoza is just part of what makes it so complicated. Do I ever worry about losing my mind or losing my grasp on reality contemplating this stuff? I don't think so. Oh, thank you, David Alonso, for the donation. Man, thank you so much. Love to hear what you liked about the Angel of Death video. Love to hear more about what you thought was great about it. That was a lot of fun to make that one. But no, I don't think I ever worry about losing my mind from reading this stuff. I think some of this stuff is really weird and it's very provocative, and I think about it when I'm out on walks or laying in bed at night. But no, I never really. It never really occurs to me that it might make me crazy. Although I've heard lots of stories, even back in graduate school in Amsterdam, that people lost their mind um, uh, contemplating some of this stuff. But I hope that doesn't happen to me. I would not want to be more crazy than I am. Let's see. Let me scroll back up and try to get some questions. Yeah, this question here from Frederick about I think that there's something right about it. And this is also part of what I like about Spinoza's connection to Stoicism, which I really love Stoicism. I've always found Stoicism to be just a profoundly interesting way of being and a philosophy that's really helped me a lot in my life. I think the link between Spinoza and Stoicism is very strong. And also, I'll be doing a video at some point soon for folks who are interested in Stoicism, because I also think the Stoics are part of what opens the door to esoteric hermeneutics. That without Stoicism, you would never get you would not really get a really rich idea that text can have multiple layers of interpretation, in which a deep level, a sort of hidden level, encodes very important secret ideas or something. That idea actually comes in a big way out of Stoicism. So I'll be talking about that as well. But yeah, I think that the link between Stoicism and Spinoza has always been something that's intrigued me from a practical point of view, just because I find both of those schools of philosophy so very compelling, so very compelling. Although I'm not, again, I think that a lot of these schools are not. I don't have to get on board with everything. Like, do I really think that there's a fiery logos out there? I'm not so sure about that. Not so sure about that. Yeah, all of Chrysippus is what, 705 books, all got lost. Um, I have the Stoicorum Vitorum Philosophorum over there, the entire set of what remains, and it is a pity. It is a pity that all that stuff got lost. Yeah, thank you, thank you. It's always nice to get some messages in Hebrew. Which is funny because my Hebrew is always filtered through like ancient Hebrew. So when I read modern Hebrew, I have to like translate it in my head to ancient Hebrew, kind of. Have you ever taken psychedelic substances under a ceremonial guide? I've not. I've taken psychedelic substances before, but never under a ceremonial guide. I think that could be interesting, I suppose, but I've never done it in that space. I think that's I will say, however, that that seems like a really responsible way, one of many very responsible ways to use psychedelic drugs. So I all about responsible use of mind altering substances. Let's see here. Yeah, Austin also on Sparrow. I'll definitely get to him in the future. His stuff on cycles is super interesting. Definitely going to get to him eventually. The Emden Eibeschutz controversy of 1751. I mean, what do I think about it? I mean, I guess I'm on. Do I think that Eibeschutz was secretly a Shabbatian? Maybe, probably. I'm on Team Emden. I think most of the time. I like Van Emden. Ik kan niks met Nederlands. So I have sympathies to Van Emden. I do think Shabbatianism. I think that Shabbatianism actually was a lot more popular than people want to admit. I also would say, and this may Zevi over at Seekers of Unity, I wonder what he would think about this. But I also think that Hasidism was actually a lot more deeply influenced by Shabbatianism than they admit. But yeah, I think Shabbatianism survived in Europe for a long time. In fact, I bet it survived all the way up until the 20th century. So I think that it was a much more influential idea than people often say it was. So I think that there were a lot more Shabbatians out there than admitted they were. Yeah, there's still folks in Turkey, the so-called Donme, that practice. In fact, I taught a class on Shabbatites V a couple of years ago, and hey, Philip, thank you. It's good to see you, man. I taught a class on Shabbatites V, and one of the people that took my class, she was Donme. She was a member of she came from a Donme family, a Shabbatian family, and she was basically there to learn about her heritage because they had become secular during the Ataturk period. And she was like, yeah, I want to learn about this guy that my family thought was the Messiah for centuries. And so it was really intense and really intimidating because, here I am teaching an academic class and there's a person trying to learn about their political, well, not their political, but their ideological ideas or their religious ideas from me. And who am I to do that, So this was a really interesting, really interesting thing. Am I on the leftist Marxist side of things? Yeah, I'm highly influenced by Marx. Yeah, I would say that I'm probably deeply influenced by a Marxist theory of understanding history. Will I make videos about it? I might make a video about Marx's relationship to monsters, maybe. If you've ever read Karl Marx, he talks a lot about monsters and Das Kapital and other places, the specter haunting Europe and hobgoblins and spirits and vampires. And so there's this whole thing about about marks and monsters that I really want to. I'll probably make a video at some point, but am I going to make a video on Das Kapital? No, probably not. Probably not. Do I speak any German? I can read German, but I don't speak German very well. But I can read German okay. I can read German okay, depending on what it is. Depending on what it is. I mean, trying to read Kant in German is a nightmare. And then, some things are easy, some things easier than other. Reading Heidegger in German is not so fun. But more normal things. Yeah, I can typically get through that stuff. Yeah, thank you so much for the kind word on the channel, folks. Again, I really appreciate you guys watching and commenting and going with me on this journey. I'm super thankful that folks will take the time to look at the content, and the content's always all over the place in terms of what we're dealing with every week. So one week it's alchemy, and one week it's Kabbalah, and one week it's Spinoza, and next week we're gonna be looking probably at the Mithras liturgy back in the Greek magical papyri. So that folks will take a chance on looking at the content, even if it's not something that you're immediately interested in. I really appreciate and really am thankful that folks will go along for the ride of popping open a video and being like, let's see what Crazy Sledge has to say about the Mithras liturgy or whatever. So I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that attitude. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think Kant's pretty hard to read. Like, it's just the way that the way he writes is super hard. And he's really hard to read in English for me. Damn. Let me jump back up and see if there's any other questions. I really want to try to get to some more stuff. Hildegard of Bingen. Yeah, I've already covered some Hildegard. I'd love to cover more because just how cool she is. Hey, Larry. Thank you so much for your donation. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, man. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, Frederick, about the Antonio Damasio stuff. That's a great book. Spinoza, sort of a Spinoza's read of the emotions. I think the sort of neurological understanding of Spinoza. Yeah, that stuff seems really super smart. I don't have a background in neurology, so I can't say, but I'm all about the updating of Spinozistic ideas into a modern place. Yeah, Crazy Sledge, a good wrestling name. Yeah, that would be true. Let me just jump up here and see other folks' questions. Oh, the Spinoza thing about the Einstein thing about him saying he believes in Spinoza's God. He says this several times, actually. He's said this several times, that he believes in Spinoza's God. I think what he means, right, is that Einstein did not believe in a personal God who intervenes in nature, but rather he believed in a God who was for whom nature and the laws of nature were an expression of that divinity. And so the idea is that insofar as God expresses God's self, God expresses God's self in the law of nature, in the laws of nature, and that in some sense, and this is what I find to be really beautiful about physics, is that that when one did the work of uncovering the laws of nature, as Einstein and Bohr and all those guys were doing, that process was a kind of theological undertaking. And I really find that to be a really beautiful way of thinking about how doing the work of physics. And Einstein certainly thought of himself as doing something like that. And so yeah, when he says he believes in the God of Spinoza, it's a God for whom the laws of nature are an expression of that divinity. Jacob, thank you so much. Luke, thank you so much for your donation, man. Thank you for supporting the channel. Wow. Yeah, I'm just floored by folks that are willing to drop by and throw a couple bucks at the channel, man. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, Meister Eckhart. I definitely will do some episodes on Meister Eckhart in the future. I've actually copied out an entire sermon of Meister Eckhart by hand in calligraphy. If you guys want to see some pages of it, I can go over there and grab it. If you're really interested, I can go get it out of my desk. Yeah, I find Meister Eckhart to be fascinating. And in the meantime, if you haven't seen Philip's episode on Meister Eckhart over at Let's Talk Religion, absolutely go over there, watch it. Philip has a excellent episode on Meister Eckhart. So if you have not seen that, definitely should check it out. Yeah, it's in Latin. Let me go get it. I'll go get it. 1 second. I keep all my calligraphy in this this desk over here. Here we go. Ugh. All right, folks, here it is. And I'm back. Yeah, so here is, I've never completed the capitals, but this is the entire sermon. This is the sermon on hunger and eating. But you can see, yeah, you can see like page after page after page of copying this sermon out. And then when I got to the really, really beautiful section where he talks about eating hunger itself, I did the whole thing in these big versals, so it would be like stand out as like the big page. But yeah, this is like a ton of work, folks. This was like copying the entire sermon out by hand took me, I don't know, a bunch of weeks. So eventually I'll do something with this. Maybe I'll get it bound and do something with it. I don't know. Most of my calligraphy just like sits in my table and does nothing happens with it. But maybe at some point I don't know, I'll donate it. I'll donate it to something. Let me jump back up to the top here. Oh, thank you so much for your donation. Social Justice Lending Library. That sounds cool. Yeah, so thank you for that. Thank you for your donation. Yes, Pseudo-Dionysius, absolutely. The apophatic theology there, super fascinating. And the hierarchy of angels, also incredibly important stuff as well. So definitely going to get to some Pseudo-Dionysius as well. Let me see. Yeah, eventually I think I will do a library tour at some point. I have some really cool old books that I might show off. I have a really cool copy from 1633 of Martin de Rio's Disquitorum Magicarum, which is a really neat encyclopedia of magic and stuff that I'll eventually put on the channel. So I'll eventually get to that as well. Let's see. Quantum mechanics, quantum physics. I don't know. I don't know the first thing about quantum physics. That stuff is so complicated. I mean, I know like the most basic sort of stuff about that stuff. So I often find it very irritating when people wade into topics on quantum mechanics when they don't really understand it. That is to say, like they don't understand things like the mathematics behind it. And I always tell people that if you don't understand the math behind the quantum mechanics or the quantum physics, you don't actually understand the quantum mechanics. And so I try to, the more I learn about that, the more I realize I don't know anything about it. So I don't try to wade into it very much. Because I think it's kind of like all my physics friends find it to be incredibly ridiculous, silly. Yeah, thank you. Let's see here. Yeah, The Cloud of Unknowing. Also really beautiful text in English, a really medieval, like a medieval text in English that's also really, really lovely as well. Yeah, I will say, Neon Cicada, that the YouTube viewership of the channel is it really is a lot of awesome people. Awesome people who are super smart. That's like so many of the comments ask really, really technical questions. And I'm really often blown away by just how deep people's knowledge goes. And so people ask such probing questions, and I'm always so impressed by the comments that the channel gets. And so I'm really, really impressed by that kind of stuff. Super impressed by that. Let's see here. Yeah, I should. Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do with these manuscripts. What do I think about the Deleuze books on Spinoza? They're great. The little one is really good. Expressionism is a pain to read, but it is really, really a really important understanding of Spinoza. I don't think it's always true to Spinoza's project. Deleuze doesn't care about that. But it is very creative, and I do find his read of Spinoza to be really, really exciting. So yeah, I like Deleuze's reading of Spinoza. I don't know that it's really Spinoza in there, but I'm not one of these. There's a lot of people who are like, Deleuze just misreads everybody on purpose to blah 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 blah, and I'm like, if he's reading people, if Deleuze is reading people like Leibniz and Spinoza or Hume or Nietzsche or whatever in creative ways, and he's generating philosophical ideas that are novel and important, that's great. Why are we hounding this guy about this? So so I'm not one of these I'm not one of these kind of guys that doesn't like Spinoza, the Deleuzian way of reading. What I don't like is when people try to ape Deleuze and they don't really understand the source material, and when they ape Deleuze, that they do it poorly. Yes, I have read Nick Land. Yep, Nick Land is a terrifying thinker, and that is why he should be taken very seriously. I think he should be taken very seriously. I think a lot of lefty people write him off because of his racism and stuff like that, and that stuff is to me pretty deplorable. But just because your ideas are perhaps deplorable doesn't mean they shouldn't be taken seriously and engaged with. So so on the one hand, I find his thinking to be pretty terrifying, and on the other hand, I feel like in the same way that I think that in the same way I think of other people like Julius Evola, who, fascist mysticism and stuff like that. That stuff is super scary to me, and obviously I don't want to be on the receiving end of that kind of stuff. But they need to be taken seriously, and they need to be studied seriously. And so the idea that we should just like cancel them and not read them, that just seems that is actually not going. If you're scared of fascism and you don't like fascism, canceling them and not reading them guarantees that fascism will emerge. But if you take them seriously and think about them hard and debate with them at some level, then we're able to think much more clearly about what's going on and what's generating these ideas. But the idea that we somehow solve a problem by not thinking about it, that is real stupid. Very, very stupid. So yeah, I've never understood that kind of mentality. Do you think Spinoza's family experience of exile affected his philosophy? Yeah, maybe it made him better prepared to be in exile himself. That is to say, I think that he was already in some sense sort of he was already at the edge of an experience. And I think that part of what makes Spinoza so important is that because because he was an outsider, like all outsiders see things we don't see, right? Us normie people, at least me. And so being on the outside allowed him to see the world in a new and important way. And the fact that he came from a family basically of exiles, I think that made him much more willing to take the leap to get outside and to stay outside of his comfort zone and of the world that existed at his time. And because of his ability to make that leap, he was able to reveal a world to us that I think no one at the time could see but him. I think he uniquely had the ability to see it because of the epistemological situatedness of his outsiderness. And that is a crucially important thing. And this is why it's also really, I think, important to take seriously outsiders, because outsiders, people who are at the limits of social groups or people at the limits of experiences, they're going to get a glimpse into the world that allows people like me, who I don't think of myself as much of an outsider. Maybe I am, but when I hear outsider thinking, I try to take it really, really seriously, because I think that they get a glimpse behind the veil, so to speak, of what seems very, very normal to us, but in fact is very, very odd, and they give us a unique insight. And Spinoza gave us one of the most unique insights into both metaphysics and politics. So I'm very thankful for the outsider. Very thankful for the outsider. Let me jump back up. Sorry, folks. I'm just trying to get. Do I talk about the Klipot? Yeah, I'll talk about the Klipot. Yep. In fact, in the second part of the episode on early Kabbalah, one of the texts I'll be talking about is the treatise on the emanations of the left-hand side, which is basically the founding document analyzing the Klipot. So I'll definitely be looking at the origin of the Klipot, how that theory comes about, and talking about that. Yep, I read Hakim Bey. Hakim Bey is amazing. Good temporary autonomous zones. I don't think it's a long-term solution for political change, but I do think that that the idea of the Taz has done some really cool heavy lifting. And he's just a cool, smart thinker. I just, again, like these people who are at the fringes of stuff just really, really fascinate me. Anti-Semitism and the Zohar. Is the Zohar like Jewish supremacist? Yeah, definitely. I'm not gonna lie about it. Yeah, the Zohar definitely is a text that that expresses a deep hatred of non-Jews. The text is like that. I know people like to cover this stuff up because they want to be politically correct or whatever, but no, the Zohar definitely has a very, very hardcore idea that what we would now call something like Jewish supremacism. I find those ideas repugnant myself. I have no truck with those kinds of ideas, and I find them to be gross and bad and primitive. And so, yeah, when you look at the Zohar, sure, is there stuff in there that's repugnant? Sure, just like in the Bible, it's like in the Talmud, it's like in the Quran, it's like in the Book of the Law and Crowley's writings. There's a lot of repugnant things, and I think that, and I say repugnant, I mean repugnant to my beliefs. And when I see repugnant things, I name them as bad. I don't try to hide them. I don't try to lie about it and say they're not there. I just think that I'm not. I don't find myself to be beholden to taking, for instance, the Zohar in its totality. I can accept some aspects about the Zohar and find it to be very beautiful and a very beautiful piece of literature. I can take it very seriously and take none of it literally, right? So we should make a distinction here between taking something seriously and taking it literally. And when I read gross stuff in the Bible, or repugnant stuff about whatever in the Zohar, I don't have to feel the need to be led down the path of Jewish supremacism that I find in the Zohar. I just find it to be. I'm like, yeah, that's there. That's not good. I don't accept that. So, So I'm not one of these people that, and I don't think anyone has to be. That just because we can take a text like the Zohar very seriously does not mean that I'm beholden to every aspect of it. I'm not beholden to any of it. Don't feel that way. Do not feel that way. Let's see here. Let's scroll back up. Am I a postmodern neo-Marxist? I am definitely not postmodern. And if I'm a Marxist, I'm like a 1910 Marxist. I definitely don't like postmodernism. Like I find it too clever. I'm a very stupid person. And so when things are very clever, I'm very like put off by clever things. And so I'm not terribly impressed by postmodernism, which I think is a literary movement, not a philosophical movement. I don't know why people keep saying postmodernism as if it's a philosophical movement. It's a literary movement. And I'm also not a relativist. I don't buy relativism. Also, I don't think that Derrida and Foucault and those people accepted relativism either. I think that's just a misreading of their philosophical projects. I'm not bought on that stuff. Maybe I'm just not clever enough to understand it. Maybe when I get a little older and I'll be smarter, I'll really understand it. But yeah, I don't trust being clever. I don't know. Maybe I'm an anti-intellectual at heart. Let's see here. Yeah, Gamer 7916. Yeah, I think most religious texts believe that they've figured it all out. And anytime I see people who've figured it all out, I'm like, yeah, you're definitely at step one. Figuring it all out is step one. Not realizing you haven't figured it all out is probably step two. But step one is the ridiculous arrogance to believe that you've solved fundamental problems in reality. Yeah, that's yeah, that's just silly, silly. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I might be smart. I mean, whatever. I think I might be smart and be educated, but again, that doesn't mean um, doesn't mean that I get on board with that kind of stuff. Um, Yep, the Maya, it is a Maya pictograph, and I will be doing episodes on Maya religion and Maya mysticism specifically. They're already in the works. I'm actually brushing up on my Maya to do some of those. But yeah, one of the some of the stuff I want to look at is especially the bloodletting rituals that occurred as forms of divination in the Maya religion. Um, um, yeah, they get these really hardcore names like mutilated foreskin from having done the ritual of pulling the string or the barbs through the foreskin over and over again. And so you get these like honorific names like heavily mutilated foreskin, which is just about the most terrifyingly metal thing that I've heard about. So yeah, all about Maya religion. Find it to be absolutely fascinating. Um, yeah, definitely going to do some stuff on the Baal. Folks seem to really be interested in the Baal cycle. Yeah, and early Yawism. Definitely want to look at some early Yawism stuff. I go through a lot thinking about Yawism and how Yawism developed and this entity that I find super interesting. So definitely going to be looking at that and the rise of Yawism and how that this entity, very minor deity, really became such a decisively important deity in the world of history. So super fascinating stuff with early Yawism. Um, let's see here. Let me scroll back up real fast. See what I think of Richard Dawkins. He's smart. I don't know. I think he has a pretty simplistic understanding of religion and what religion is. I think a lot of those new atheist folks are. I think they just, um, yeah, you're good at biology, but I'm not sure about the rest. Not sure about the rest. Have I ever changed my religion? I don't think so. I think I've stayed the same religion. I think my attitudes about my religion have changed. I think certainly what I believed when I was 10 years old and what I believed at 16 and what I believe at 25 and now 40 have changed a lot. So under the hood, I think things have changed, but I think I've been there. Videos on Paracelsus and Giordano Bruno, absolutely, definitely. I was actually just reading some Paracelsus the other day. I love him. I would not want to be anywhere near him in my life, but I love him. He is fantastic. He was just such a bag of hammers. That guy was great. I really love him. So yeah, definitely Paracelsus stuff like this. Saint Cyprian, absolutely. Um, do you believe in your heart that magic and getting something out of thin air exist? I don't think so. I mean, I guess the way of saying it right is that do I have any evidence that one can manipulate reality through supernatural means? I don't have any evidence that you can do that. I've not experienced anyone doing that myself. So you know, I've not experienced that, but but I'm also not the kind of person that says that I have the end all, that I'm the end all be all of all things. I try to be very humble about what I think is true. I try to be very honest about what I think is true. But do I think that I have evidence that the ability to magically manipulate reality is real? I don't see much evidence for that. Um, but I certainly could be wrong. I mean, lots of people over many centuries have claimed that there was, and many find this to be an important thing now. So again, not really. Again, I try to be a little bit guarded about how I think about this stuff. Um, let's see here. Yeah, Platonic mysticism and Platonic tradition of mysticism, absolutely. Um, in fact, there just isn't a mysticism without the Platonic tradition at some level, I think. So absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to get into that. I need to eventually make an episode on Plato, and maybe Plato's esoteric teachings, the so-called secret teachings, that we do have some idea of what those secret teachings were. And so making an episode just on the esoteric secret teachings of Plato would be a super fascinating thing, about the dyad and all the weird stuff he believed in toward the end of his life. Let's see here. Do something on the medieval blood libel, maybe, yeah, maybe something on the medieval. I mean, it's I think the blood libel stuff is really fascinating. Yeah, the school of Tübingen. Yeah, this is where all the esoteric Plato stuff really emerges. But yeah, the blood libel stuff I think is interesting insofar as it links up with the modern QAnon stuff. That there's a continuity of conspiracy, and I find that to be really fascinating. That these ideas of things like the blood libel can survive for centuries underground, so to speak, in our consciousness, and that they can reemerge, and how they've reemerged, how the blood libel has reemerged in the QAnon movement. And I find that to be really, really fascinating. So if I do something on the blood libel, it'd probably be on how this idea developed and how it continues to perpetuate itself all the way till now, which is really, really fascinating. Really fascinating. Dan Gibson's work, I don't think so. I'm not sure I'm familiar with it. If you give me a title, I might know it, but offhand, the name doesn't strike me as familiar. So yeah, so I can't speak on it if I don't know about it. My religion, Judaism. Yep. That's why we wear, I don't wear the hat to do anything other than cover how bald I am. I mean, it's just like, Judaism. No, the part about them having to pause to go to dinner, that is hilarious. Synesia, you're absolutely right. At the very beginning of the diaries, there's a moment where Dee is like, hey, can we stop and go eat dinner? Because someone calls out to them, like, dinner's ready. And Dee's like, we have to stop now and go eat dinner. And the angels are like, nope, you got to stick around here and listen to what I have to say. So I do like the fact that they like couldn't interrupt, that even the angels were like, no, you have to stick around. I do like that. My favorite part of the Dee diaries are just how absolutely conversational they are. Where like Dee has to correct the angels' mathematics sometimes. The angels will get, they'll do arithmetic and they'll get the arithmetic wrong. I love that stuff. I just like the idea of there's a scene where one of the angels, I don't remember which angel it is, but he confuses a square and a root, right? And John Dee has to correct him because John Dee knows his math. And I just love the idea of an angel being like, yeah, that's what I meant. I do that. I think that's fun. Christopher Scrambler, what character do I play in Dungeons and Dragons? I DM. In fact, all my Dungeons and Dragons books have been sitting there idle since this damned pandemic started. And so I have all my Dungeons and Dragons books over there. I gaze at them longingly, looking forward to the day when this pandemic is over, and my table that I'm sitting at right now is my Dungeons and Dragons table, and I can sit back in my chair and we can roll some dice and get back, because we've been playing a campaign that had lasted for like a year and a half, and we were in the third act of the campaign, about to finish the campaign, and it didn't work. Yeah, I wear the hat to get the girls. Yeah, I've actually I've said that joke before. Someone's asked me, "Are you Jewish?" And I'm like, "No, I wear the hat to get the girls." And they're like, "Really?" And I'm like, "No, not really. No, not really. No, not really." Episode on Israel Regardi. Yeah, super interesting guy. The angels must have gone to school in Alabama. Yeah, like I went to school in Mississippi. The math program wasn't so good. They must have went to a liberal arts school is what the problem is. They went to those darn liberal arts schools where they don't teach them math. And so they're just these hipster angels that don't really know how to do math. Do I dabble with any Magic the Gathering? I played the Magic the Gathering growing up. I still have my cards. Actually in the basement. I think they're fifth edition. And in fact, I had a taiga, the land taiga, and my favorite bar in Memphis, where I was in graduate school, I was so poor that I had this land, the taiga, which apparently was worth some money. and I traded it to the guy, the bartender, Chuck, who is the barman there, and he played Magic the Gathering, and he gave me a bar tab for like a bunch of money for a bar tab because I gave him a taiga. So I was like, I used a Magic the Gathering card to basically pay my bar tab until I finished graduate school. So never doubt that you can, Magic the Gathering cards have power, because I was able to use a Magic Gathering card. I was able to tap my taiga and generate PBR, which was amazing. So never doubt. Seriously, it was like a $500 bar tab. It was like, seriously, it was like it lasted me all the way through the end of graduate school. So yeah, I know I don't have any fancy. I think the taiga was the most fancy one I had, but yeah, I don't have any of the any ones anymore. But that's my Magic the Gathering card. So someone asked earlier, can you do Magic? Yes, if you have a taiga, you can get a bar tab. You can get you can summon, you can tap it and summon PBR, which I'm not sure is that magical, but it's possible. So I do not have content on all these cool things like the hymn to Enlil, the Enuma Elish, Atrahasis. No, but I will get to some of those things, yeah, especially Inanna's descent to the underworld, which is really, really fascinating. I really want to cover some of that stuff later as well. But yeah, so you signed on to an Esoterica live stream, and now he's talking about Dungeons and Dragons and paying a bar tab. You never know what these live streams are going to go. It's going to go all over the place, all over the place. The taiga was like 5th edition, something like that. Something like that. I forget. My cards are all downstairs in the basement. That's great. Let's see here. What do the Jewish people think of Scientology and a billion-year soul contract? Yeah, that sounds real heavy. I would not want to have a billion-year soul contract. I mean, Scientology is I think, I guess the only thing I will say about it is I think that, like lots of religions, there are dangerous aspects of those religions. And I think that Scientology has some pretty dangerous aspects to it. And I think lots of religions do. Lots of religions do. I mean, Judaism certainly does. There are off the chain, really bad elements in Judaism. I can pick on my own religion. I think that Scientology, the negative elements of Scientology really get a lot of the focus. And I think that it's important to try to have a balanced view of it. Do I think the preponderance of it are dangerous? I'd have to do more research, but certainly I've heard pretty scary stuff about Scientology. But again, trust me, every religion has extremist elements in it that do all kinds of not great stuff. Yeah, thank you so much for your donation, CG. Yeah, I think also the mailbag version would be really great too. So yeah, I will definitely consider that. I'll definitely consider that. Thank you, and thank you for your donation. All right, let me check up the stairs. Material theology, like Zizek's theology. Yeah, Zizek has a really great view on his book on Paul is really good. I'm not so sold on his sort of Hegelian read of Christianity, that inherently Christianity is progressive because of its universal bent. I don't know if I buy that. But I do like this sort of neo-Hegelian. I'm very sympathetic to Hegel. And I like Zizek's kind of resurrection of that kind of Hegelianism. In graduate school, no one was allowed to be Hegelians because it was all French philosophy, and you had to be anti-Hegel and anti-Plato, and you had to, be all about, hatred of the dialectic and all that stuff. And there was this weird Francophilia stuff that happened in philosophy graduate school that I never really liked. But I was always like, why can't I be on Team Hegel? Why? Because it's not fashionable? Is that what we're doing here? Is it about fashion? I don't really like intellectual fashion. Whatever that is, it ain't philosophy. It ain't philosophy. It is not philosophy. Let's see. Is Judaism a religion or an ethnicity? It's both. It's all the bad things about both. You can convert in, but if you're born ethnically Jewish, you can't get out. And so it's the worst of both. The worst of both worlds in that way. The origin of the skull cap. That's a good question. I think that there's a lot of debate about where it originated. I'm pretty sure it probably just originated in Middle Eastern headwear. I mean, folks still in the Middle East still wear versions of hats like these. and so I imagine it just kind of, I always think it sort of started off as like a kufi going all the way around and eventually just shrank and shrank and shrank until it became this the doily thing. So so um yeah, there's their idea, right, that you can't convert out of an ethnicity, right? Like you can't convert out of an ethnicity. It's not a thing you can do. So yeah, we'll prevent sunburn right here, right? So I just get terrible sunburn on the rest of my head. Um, um, but yeah, the idea. I mean, the Bible, as you probably know, right, folks, the Bible never says you have to wear these things. Even in the Talmud, it never says you have to wear one of these. It's just to become accustomed to wear them, and the idea is humility, right? It's supposed to make you humble. Although I've seen a lot of guys wear a lot of hats who are not humble, so it doesn't always work. Favorite metal band? That's a good question. See if anyone here can recognize any of my metal fan people here. I was wearing earlier when I was working on stuff. So folks can make out the black metal logo. You might be able to make out. That's one of my favorite metal bands. So you might be able to. Folks might be able to figure who that is. If not, I'll tell you. Do I feel like my hair or beard style? Yes, Derek, you're right. Wolves in the Throne Room, absolutely. Wolves in the Throne Room is an amazing band. I absolutely love Wolves in the Throne Room. I've written lots of esoteric episodes listening to Wolves in the Throne Room. So excellent band. Some of the best shows I've ever been to. Absolutely great. Let's see here. Did Hypatia contribute to the Corpus Hermeticum? Probably not. I think that she wouldn't have liked considering her interest, I think she would not have been super interested in the Corpus Hermeticum. Also, she lived way after, right? Hypatia is living centuries after the Corpus Hermeticum was already written down. So I think she just is living down. She's living afterwards. She's living several centuries after it was finished. Several centuries after it was finished. Yeah, thank you so much for the donation. I have never read Manly P. Hall. I'll just be real honest, folks. I've never read Manly P. Hall, and I've seen so many people ask questions about Manly P. Hall. I've heard some of his talks that have been recorded. So it's just a gap in my knowledge. Like everybody, I got gaps in my knowledge, and it's one of those things where I'm just gonna have to buckle down and read it. So it's one of those things where I just don't have enough knowledge to weigh in on it. And so because I don't have enough knowledge to weigh in it, I won't. But yeah, it's definitely one of the things I need to shore up in my knowledge. So shore up in my knowledge. Yeah, it's just amazing. It's all kinds of things that sometimes I think people are shocked when I say I just don't know anything about that, or I've never read that, and they're like, oh my God, this is core text in esotericism. And you're absolutely right. Manly P. Hall is incredibly important in the history of Western esotericism. It's just it's just one of these like blind spots over here that I've just never had the time and never had the wherewithal to go down to do the work to get that stuff sorted out. So something I certainly need to do. What books would you suggest? Hey, Christopher, thank you also for your donation, man. What books would I for ancient spells? Obviously, the Greek magical papyri are an absolute treasure trove. The Betz text, which I actually have right over here because I'm working on an episode for this week on the Mithras liturgy. The best collection is going to be the collection of the Greek magical papyri. So if you don't have that one, you'll definitely want to pick that one up. That is going to be the absolute best collection of texts. Although it's important to note that the Greek magical papyri don't include all the Christian magic. That's in a different volume called the Coptic Text of Ritual Power. And so you'd want to pick up that volume to kind of balance it out, because you could be led to believe that ancient magic was mostly being done by non-Christians if you didn't realize, no, there's all this other Christian magic as well. And I've have episodes on both those topics on the channel, so you might want to check those. You might want to check those out. So, yeah, thank you, Frederick. Thank you for jumping on. You mentioned a lot. Book of, hold on, let me see this from Miriam. Oh, women allowed in that library. You mean a modern library or an ancient library? I don't know. Yeah, I know that. I mean, I'm not sure with the Library of Alexandria whether I'm sure women were allowed access to there, and also the museum. The museum certainly had women. Hypatia frequented the museum, so we know that women were certainly allowed in there. Women were teachers at that time. So, but I don't. I think that the ancient libraries women certainly had access to. I mean, there's no way that Maria the Jewess or Cleopatra or Hypatia could have ever existed without having access to those libraries. And there's absolutely, there seems to be overwhelming evidence that they must have had access to those philosophical libraries. Have I ever had a supernatural or mystical experience? I've certainly had what I think are mystical experiences. I've certainly had what I think are mystical experiences. I don't know how to vet them. Supernatural experience, I think maybe when I was a kid, maybe I think I may have saw a ghost. I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but I think as a kid, maybe I saw one. And again, I don't how much I trust my own memory and how much do I trust my own experience and how much do I trust that I've told myself this story enough times that now I have a kind of false memory of what of what I believe, of what I thought. So I don't know, but maybe when I was a kid, I saw a ghost. I haven't in my adulthood. I've never experienced anything supernatural, but mystical experiences, certainly I've had mystical experiences before. So science enthusiasts ask, is my way of life just peer pressure from dead people? No, it's not just peer pressure from dead people, but peer pressure from dead people is a big part of it. Absolutely. And Reconstructionist Judaism, we have a saying, and that saying is that tradition gets a vote, not a veto, right? Gets a vote, not a veto, which is just meant to say that, yeah, I look to the tradition, I look to my traditions to inform how I live my life and how I think about things. And when they're smart and that makes sense to me, I try to follow them. And when they say crazy, racist, bad, misogynistic stuff, I don't. I just don't. So yeah, I try to strike a balance between living a life that's informed and anchored in tradition, but also a life that says, look, we've had serious gains made in modernity, and we have to take those gains made in modernity seriously, and those include technological, scientific, and moral developments. And so I'm not going to let an Iron Age book or a 7th century book tell me how to live my life without me being able to say, yeah, no. If I can't apply critical thinking to it, then yeah, I'm not going to get involved with something like that. So it's a dialectic, right? So it's a wrestling with my relationship to my tradition. So it's a traditional outlook, but it's an outlook that says tradition is one voice, but not the only voice. Not the only voice. Yep, that's exactly right, MJR Schneider. Yep, it's a balance. I don't know if it's a balance. I try to make it to be a balance. We'll see. We'll see how well I do it, which I'm sure I'll fail at it, because everybody fails at most things, and I'm not exceptional in any kind of way in that regard. The difference between a supernatural experience and a mystical experience. I think a supernatural experience will be one that I would say is not explainable by the laws of physics as we understand them, and a mystical experience is a subjective experience that happens inside one's consciousness. So I think that would be the way I would define them. Cheryl Holland, thank you for the book recommendations. Those are both, you are absolutely right. Those are both excellent texts. So thank you for adding that recommendation in there. You're absolutely right. Those are excellent texts. Yes, I will be doing an episode on Giovanni Pico della Mirandola's 900 Theses. Not all of them, because there's 900 of them. It's a lot of theses, folks. But definitely looking at some of them, the ones on magic, the ones on Kabbalah, some of the other ones, we'll look at those. So yeah, definitely looking at those at some point. Those are super interesting. All right, let me scroll here. Let me get folks. Gamer7961, thank you so much. Difference between magical incantations, especially the ones that invoke the divine in prayer. I think this line between magic and religion is a pretty artificial line. I think a lot of Orthodox people want to draw a really hard and fast line between them. I think that you can't do that. I think that magic and religion are part of a continuum, and There's no exception that I've seen to this rule. Now, there's a bunch of people in pulpits that will tell you that you can't practice magic and you can't do this and you can't do that. But the fact that they have to tell people not to do that indicates that they're doing it, right? And so I think that the line between magic, theurgy, evocations, prayer, that line has everything to do with how you want to draw lines around orthodoxy or around legitimacy, and they have nothing to do with what people do, right? So I think that the continuum between these things is incredibly fluid historically, even till now. And so I think often when people draw those lines, they're drawing those lines for political reasons or for reasons of power, because they want to draw a line to maintain legitimacy on their side of the spectrum, and then other someone else and be like, no, you're not really Christian, you're not really Jewish, not really whatever. And so I think that those lines get drawn for reasons that have everything to do with politics and do not reflect an on the ground doing of the religion, legitimate or otherwise. The shortest, most intriguing philosophical work I've read. What is the shortest, most intriguing philosophical work I've read? It's a really short thing that's super. The Tractatus by Wittgenstein. It's short. That thing's mind blowing. It's a philosophical. It's philosophy. It's analytic philosophy. It's mystical kind of. It's a real tour de force. I would say something like that. The Tractatus is a really short, pretty amazing philosophical piece. The Ethics also, folks, is not that long. If you look at the Ethics in terms of how long it is, it's not a very long text. And so I think it's also pretty impressive, pretty powerful document. Let me get back up here and look. Have I ever read Julius Evola? I was talking about him earlier. I'll get to him eventually. I think that that fascist mysticism and Nazi mysticism, esoteric Hitlerism and stuff, all that stuff is super fascinating. And again, fascinating does not mean I'm endorsing it, obviously, but the idea that we should, I think this stuff is super fascinating. I'm very interested in those kinds of things. Wittgenstein's a bit too smart for me, I think, too. I agree with you, Krell. Wittgenstein's hard, but again, this is philosophy. Sometimes it's tough. I mean, you try to read the Metaphysics, Aristotle's Metaphysics. That thing's a pain. That thing is very, very, very difficult. Let's see. Let me scroll back up here. Thoughts on Abraham Abulafia? Have folks seen this book that's out by Moshe Idel on where he teamed up with a neuroscientist to kind of test Abulafia's meditative techniques, and they worked, whatever work is, and so I think almost anything like that would work probably. But at any rate, there was a noticeable neurological change in people who attempted to use some of Abulafia's techniques. So I think that's a really fascinating avenue of research, is sort of the intersection between neuroscience and mysticism. That stuff is incredibly fascinating. All right, let me scroll back up here a little bit more. Let's see. Thank you guys so much. Episode on geomancy. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely we'll do episodes on geomancy, Jorge. Thank you. And I have your email, and I've looked at those things. The Hebrew and the handwriting in that, and those mystical documents, really difficult for me to read. So I might have to pass them on to someone with a bit more knowledge about that kind of Sephardi cursive Hebrew, which I find very, very, very difficult to read. Thank you, Lady Socorro. Thank you so much for your donation, and thank you so much for supporting the channel. And I'm so great to go live. I absolutely love this live thing. It's sort of like rapid fire, like trying to think on my feet, which is really, really hard. But I really love it. And you guys ask just the most deep questions. And so sometimes the stuff is like, wow, I'm trying to think on my feet, like, and you're right. The Monas Hieroglyphica is only 60 pages. It's relatively short as well. But it's trying to answer some of these questions. It's like a mental gymnastics, which is it feels, my mind feels just really, really worked out. So I really appreciate it. But thank you guys so much. Any books based on exorcism are similar to King Solomon and Jewish magic? I mean, what are some of the I mean, in Jewish magic, there's so much of it's wrapped up in things like Sefer Raziel and the Sefer Malbush and texts like this. Yeah, I mean, there aren't any. I mean, there's a translation of the Key of Solomon into Hebrew, the Maftiach Shlomo, which you can actually look at online, the Hebrew manuscripts online. I was actually looking at it just the other day. Yeah, here it is actually. If you want to take a look at the Hebrew translation, but the Hebrew translation is a translation from Latin. It's not written actually originally in Hebrew. So I would say that that Jewish magic, I don't think, has the same kind of connection to Solomon that the way medieval Christian magic does. But the exorcism stuff, also, exorcisms really don't really happen much in the Jewish Middle Ages. It's really in the aftermath of the Kabbalah and Sfat, where we start to see a bunch of Jewish exorcism stuff begin to be generated in the late 16th and through the 17th centuries. Let's see here. Let me scroll back up. Do you think there are any connections to Jewish religion and Saturn? I mean, historically, yeah, that's the planet of the Jewish people or whatever, that the Jewish people, for whatever reason, been always associated with Saturn, Judaism with Saturn, Christianity with Jupiter, sort of the more jovial religion. But yeah, this is a thing that this is a thing. Do I think parts of the Raziel written by Abulafia? I don't think so. I think that that the Sefer Raziel is a weird text. It's wrapped up primarily in astrological magic, and I don't think that Abulafia has much interest in that. So I don't think he wrote it. I don't think he wrote parts of it. I don't think he wrote parts of it either. I think it's a completely different school of magic that exists separate from him. Yep, reincarnation is definitely a belief that some Jewish people have. There is a systematical text written about this called Sha'arei HaGilgulim, the Gates of Reincarnation, which involves not just reincarnation, but also the idea of soul roots. I'll do an episode on this at some point, that all people have roots of souls that go back to a specific root in a character in the Bible. And so there, the idea that people have different soul roots, and that part of what you have to do in this world is fix the sins of all the people in your soul root. And so, for instance, Chaim Vital, the famous Kabbalist, his soul root was, of all people, Cain, like Cain and Abel came. And so he had a lot of work to do to fix his soul root business. So yeah, there's absolutely lots of ideas about reincarnation in Judaism. Yeah. Would I ever publish any of my own manuscripts, like stuff I've written? Yeah, I've written articles on John Dee. I published those in Journal Aries. I will, though, say that at this point right now in my life, I'm much more interested in creating content on YouTube than writing journal articles or books. I find that if I'm going to write a book, I want to write a book that's going to be popularly read. I don't want to write a book that's going to be some thing published by Brill and it's going to cost $600 and 5 people are going to read it. I just don't want to do that. I think it's really important and glad people are doing that. Obviously, my work relies on that. But in my career right now, I'm much, much more interested in doing popular education, because I think that a lot of the material that I cover on Esoterica doesn't get covered other places. And if it does get covered, it doesn't get covered in an academic way, which I don't think that academics should be the only people covering this material. Other people should be able to cover it in whatever way they see fit. But I do think that there's a dearth of academic coverage of this material, scholarly coverage of this material. And I feel like there's so much of a demand for that coverage that I'd rather be making that material now in my career than working on journal articles or writing really obscure books. Will I get an Instagram? I don't think Instagram connects to these kinds of phones, does it? Can I take a picture with this kind of phone? I don't think it does. No, I still have an ancient phone. At some point, I will eventually upgrade to a smartphone when the pandemic's over. And yeah, but at this point, no, I don't think I want to have Instagram. Don't think I want to have Instagram. Is the COVID jab the mark of the beast? I hope so. That'd be fun. That'd be real interesting if it were. So, but I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that the conspiracy theories around the COVID stuff are rely on the idea that people are smart. People are not smart. They're not smart enough to do stuff like that. Conspiracies rely on people being smart and people being quiet, and people are usually neither. People are usually neither. Are there any books on widely available on esotericism that I recommend? Yeah, I'm eventually going to make a reading list at some point. This is going to be sort of like a syllabus. I'll put that out there at some point. Maybe I'll do a whole episode that's just sort of like, if I were studying esotericism in 2021, what would be the 10 books I would read and why? So I may make an episode about that in the future if folks think that would be useful, a kind of like syllabus for 10 books that, you know, if you can read these 10 books, then you'll have a good grasp to jump off to other places. So if folks would be interested in that, let me know and I'll do that. Have I done a video on Frankism? No, not yet. I'm sure folks are seeing a lot of my episodes, they skew a little older in time chronologically. And the reason why that is because I couldn't do an episode on Frankism until I do an episode on Shabbatites V. I can't really do an episode on Shabbatites V until I do some episodes on Kabbalah and Sfat. So there's a kind of logical progression that some of these ideas take, because what I don't want to do is make an episode, for instance, about Frankism, where someone could watch that episode and then be super confused about what in the hell is going on with Frankism, and me not be able to point to an episode on Shabbatites V in which they would be able to go back and look at the Shabbatites V episode to get a better grasp on Frankism. Because what I don't want to do, what I don't want to do is I want the channel to be as accessible as possible, so that somebody can open up any episode on the channel and understand it. And even if there are complicated things in one episode, you can reference other episodes so that folks will never feel like they're lost, right? So I don't want to make it so that I don't want anyone to come away from an episode feeling like, oh, that went over my head, or oh, I can't ever understand that, because everybody can understand all this material. It's esoteric, yes. Obviously, the name of the channel is Esoterica, but it's not so difficult that people can't understand it. And so my job, what I take to be my job on the channel, is to make this material completely approachable by anybody. And so what I don't want to do is create material that requires people to know things that the channel's not already covered. So that's my reason for having done things in a way that, that is kind of progressing logically, so that no one watches an episode and feels like, hey, this guy's just like talking over my head for no reason. I don't want to do that. I don't think that's fair, or like it's not really great educational. Let me see here. Yeah, by the way, people make fun of me because of my smartphone thing. I got this for free on like Facebook Marketplace. Like, you can get these phones for free. And also I like it because it's not distracting. I feel like I would be super distracted by a smartphone. And so I don't like that distraction. And so I'm all about having the non-distractive phone. But part of what I want to do once the pandemic's over is I want to be able to go live on site, because I want to start going to some museums that have some really cool esoteric artifacts. And I want to be able to do on-site filming and interviews with people about cool, like, incantation bowls or whatever. And so part of what will facilitate that will be having a phone that will have a good camera and things like that. So that is a thing that, the smartphones make people stupid. I think that's true. I think that smartphones can make some people stupid. All right, folks. So I'm probably going to stay on until about an hour and a half, so about 6 more minutes, because I really want to get outside and enjoy the sunny weather and go on a walk with my dog, because I love my dog and she deserves to go on walks because she's a good girl. I will. Yeah, I'll try to cover some stuff in Eastern mysticism, like Tantraism and things like that. I'm not an expert in that stuff, so probably what that'll mean is me learning a lot more about it. One, and then me bringing on other experts. Me bringing on other experts to do that kind of work, because I think Esoterica is going to be a much bigger platform than just me. I think I'm always going to be the person who's going to be the anchor for the channel, I hope. But I really hope that it becomes a much bigger platform than just, what I know, because there's so much I don't know. And I'm so much more, I'm interested in getting Esoterica out there and really covering a lot of different materials. So my dog is a little gray pit bull. Little gray pit bull. She's about 50 pounds, 40 pounds. She's super cute. If she were in here, I would show y'all, but she's sunbathing in the other room, which is because she's smart. She's smarter than me. So let me go back up here. Avri, thank you so much for your donation. I would say the most important text that I found for studying astrology at the academic level is oh man, now it's completely slipped my mind. The Chris Brennan text on Hellenistic astrology is really good. It manages to do really smart academic stuff, and it's really good if you want to learn about how to do astrology. So Chris Brennan is a super brilliant guy in general, and so his book on Hellenistic astrology is really good. The Standard History of Astrology is the 2-volume history of astrology by the name slipped my mind now. It's right behind me. But there's a 2-volume. If you leave a comment on the channel, I can give you the links to this, and also the Charles Teeter 1-volume history of astrology. So that would give you the big historical overlap you would need to start a robust academic study of astrology. What is that 2-volume history of astrology book? I cannot remember. It's put up by Continuum. The author's name has slipped my mind now. I'm sorry. But if you leave me a comment, I can look it up for you. I can definitely look it up for you. Esoteric museums in the Netherlands. Yeah, you got to go check out the Embassy of the Free Mind on the Keizersgracht. Absolutely the best, one of the most important resources in the world for the history of esotericism. Absolutely. I think that Chris and I are going to be working on a project at some point, maybe on his podcast, about Judaism and astrology. So look for that. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but I think it's going to happen. Jason, thanks for your donation, man. I would also like to begin having conversations with folks who are practitioners. I just don't know what the right avenue for that would be. I'm not sure it's Esoterica, because Esoterica is going to remain a completely academic focused channel, but maybe at some point there'll be a sister channel or brother channel, a sibling channel of Esoterica that will be more academic meets practitioner, because I really do enjoy those conversations as well. I've had a couple of really great conversations with Aaron Leach, who's written some really great books on John Dee and the Abramelin. And so I would really love to be able to sit down and talk to those folks and have conversations about where we see eye to eye and where we don't. And people like Stephen Skinner, people like Damien Eccles. I would love to have conversations with those folks to see how we relate to one another, because I think there would be an interesting kind of relationship, and I'd love to do that. But I'm not sure that Esoterica is the platform for it. But maybe there's another platform that I just need to build to do that. Water drowsing. Yeah, it's not a thing I know a lot about, but I know that people still practice it. I grew up with a guy whose grandfather did it. He did dowsing, and not just water dowsing, but like oil dowsing and all kinds of things. And he had the 2 metal rods that he would use, and he would have other things as well that he would use to do this. I find that super interesting. I'd love to have scientists on board. I'm all about having scientists on board. For me, especially like neuroscientists, I really find the boundary between neuroscience, mysticism, and this stuff to be just a really, really fascinating and really fruitful field of study. Is there an esoteric dimension to Plato's Symposium? Yes, there's an esoteric dimension to all of Plato. All of Plato that we see is a tip of an iceberg. The Plato that we know is the tip of the iceberg, and there is so much below the surface, and Plato tells us as much. So absolutely, there is absolutely a Platonic underground lurking just beneath Plato's ideas. Absolutely. The Templars, do I think that they had secret teachings? I don't know. I think that they were executed incorrectly. I think that all those charges of them worshiping Baphomet and doing that stuff were all trumped up. I think that stuff was all not true. All not true. What book recommendations would you have for studying cycles in the language of angels? The angelic language stuff, Aaron Leach has an excellent 2-volume set on the angelical languages, at least of John Dee. Cycles, I would point you that if you really want to study cycles, my friend Reverend Eric over at the Arnemancy podcast does an entire class just on cycles. And so if you want to study cycles, I would go check out his podcast. Let me see, I can give you his Twitter. Not that I have Twitter, but I happen to know his Twitter handle. And he has a whole class just on cycles if you want to learn about cycles. And if you do it, let him know I sent you. He's a great guy. I've been on his podcast once, and I just really, really, really adore him. He's such a kind, thoughtful, smart person. I really, really do appreciate him in a lot of ways. So check out Reverend Eric's class on cycles if you're interested in cycles, and check out Aaron Leach's book on angelical languages if you're interested in that. All right, folks, I'm coming down to it just about the end. Where to start with the Platonic Underground? 2 places. One place. There's a great chapter in John Collins's book on Middle Platonism about the Platonic Underground. I'll be doing an episode about it, so wait for that, or don't wait for that. You go read his book about it. But also, there's a chapter at the beginning of the book on Middle Platonism that discusses Plato's secret teachings, and you can find what we think we know about them there. You can find what we know about them there. So if you're really interested in that, oh wow, Big Al, man, thank you so much for that huge donation, brother. Wow, man, thank you. Do I think that materialism is a big problem? Do you mean materialism like people wanting a bunch of money? Then yes. Do I think that materialism as a philosophy is a problem? I might be a materialist. Yes, the Mayan stuff, absolutely, Jorge. Yeah, the Maya stuff is actually coming down the pike. I was actually just reading something in Maya the other day. I was translating some Maya just the other day. So I'm all about that, doing some work on the Maya, absolutely, and Maya religion and Maya mysticism. All right, folks, I think, I'd love to do a talk with Professor Hanegraaff. He helped me to get my first article published in Esotericism, and I really, really appreciate him in so many ways. Walter was a great mentor, and I really, really I much kavod, right? As we say in Hebrew, much kavod, much glory, much honor to Professor Hanegraaff. He is a jewel in the history of all this and in the study of all this stuff. And he really helped me. He really helped me in lots and lots of ways. Lots of ways. The deal with the John Dee mirror in the British Museum. One of them he probably never used. The Maya one, I don't think he ever used. The black one. Because he draws pictures of the scrying mirrors he's using in the journal. Right? If you read John Dee's, if you read his actual his diary, he draws pictures of the actual scrying mirrors, and they're crystal balls basically. In fact, we're not even completely sure that that the black mirror he ever even owned. There's really questions about to what degree he owned it. Am I going to go with the dog, or the dog's going to walk me? The dog is going to walk me probably. But we'll see. All right, folks, I think I might be coming down to the end for today's live stream. But if you have other questions, please hold on to them, because I'm going to start doing live streams, I think twice a month. I think every other week. I'm probably going to do a live stream on Friday afternoons like this, probably around 2. So I think every other week after the Esoteric episodes drops that week, and maybe a little bit after some time has to watch it, folks can hang out and we can talk about it or talk about other kinds of things and and just hang out. I just like you guys. Just fun to hang out with all you folks. I love being in the company of smart people, and I love being in the company of thoughtful, kind people. And you guys are the Venn diagram of thoughtful, smart, kind people that inspire me to do this work and make me feel great about doing it. And I really appreciate all of you. I appreciate the patrons who make the channel possible. Appreciate the viewers, you guys that watch the material and think about it, and give me feedback, both critical and solid, in terms of encouraging me to do it. You guys make the channel possible. I never knew this channel could ever be this kind of thing, and so I'm humbled and I'm thankful. I think cultivating gratitude. If we can always cultivate gratitude, I think we become better people. And it's so easy for me to cultivate gratitude being around people who are just who are so gracious. So thank you for all your support of the channel. It's going to be a great year for the channel. We're going to do a lot of cool stuff. We're going to cover a lot of material. So Toda Rabbah. Thank you very much. Tonight is Shabbat, so if you're Jewish, I want to wish everyone good Shabbos, good Shabbat Shalom. And if you're not Jewish, I want to wish you peace. Absolutely, peace. We could all use some more peace in our life. So, yeah, wish you guys all the peace and all the relaxation. So, yeah. All right, folks, y'all take it easy. I'll see y'all on in a couple weeks, or I'll see y'all in a couple weeks on the live stream. And take a look at the Spinoza episode. Make sure to go to Seekers of Unity. Check out his episodes. Awesome guy. And again, thank you.